The next one on my list is the first comedy on my list. Actually, more of a satire, but wildly funny. Dr. Strangelove. I feel like this is the greatest satire of all time.
Certainly the best black comedy of all time.
Yeah. I've watched the serious version of this movie a couple times, Failsafe, and it just does not work at all. It seems so silly and absurd watching this movie. Kubrick found a way to play up the absurdity, make it more absurd, make it more ridiculous, and it's more believable.
Yeah, he started out, of course, I guess you know this, he was going to make a movie like Failsafe.
Yeah.
And when they were sitting around the room talking about the movie, they couldn't help but start joking about this stupid situation.
Yeah.
And he decided to go off with that.
Yeah, and if, this is the film that I think displays the genius of Kubrick. I mean, if maybe like a high school student came up to me and said, "What's the deal with this Kubrick guy? Why is he a big deal?" I would say, just Strangelove. That's the clearest example of how much of a genius he is. Watch Strangelove and then watch Failsafe, or even watch Failsafe and then watch Strangelove, because they're based on the same book.
If you can get through Failsafe.
Yeah. I've actually watched two versions of Failsafe. I watched the Henry Fonda version, and I watched the more recent version with George Clooney and Don Cheadle, and they're both really like. I would just get to the end of that movie, and I'm like, what human being would do those things? It's totally unbelievable. So Strangelove all the way for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Next on my list is Gone with the Wind.
Okay.
I grew up with it, and so it's just in my veins, in my blood, and
that's another one like Casablanca that I think critics would sort of leave off their list, but like film goers would put on their list.
It's just such an iconic movie, and almost.
I think it did make the somewhere in the top 200.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's along like I was saying it. This is the movie I was referencing when I was talking about Giant. It does obviously take part a long period of time. You see all this change happen, but it's just such. I mean, it was made in '39, and I don't feel 39 like 1939. When I see it every time, just like this is such a timeless movie, despite it obviously being set during the Civil War. It's a movie, every time I see it, I see something different or see something that I never noticed before. And that actually happened when I purchased the Blu-ray not too long ago and watched it. It's essentially the one that I fought with, but I had to go with just because for me, it really influenced my love for movies. And I know my mom always used to watch it with me, and she loves it. It's it's almost along the same lines as Casablanca. Is like you almost forget where all these lines come from.
Yeah,
all these iconic lines. People are quoting them, but then it's just like, do you have any idea where that's from?
So ingrained in the culture that it's just part of the background.
Exactly. So that's the one that does it for me in terms of that sort of cultural hit. Because I mean, they could release it tomorrow and it would make more money than any hit movie that's out right now. It's the movie for some people that I know. So there you go.
Yeah.
Well, this is where mine turns perverse. I wanted to put like with Hitchcock, I felt like I had to have a Renoir film on my list.
Okay.
Because I think Renoir is one of the great directors of all time. And I knew the one I like the best is Rules of the Game. I knew they were going to vote for that. And I knew that Grand Illusion, so I was going to be hip and go somewhere where a lot of people don't even know this Renoir movie. And you can only get it in a single DVD at some cut rate price that's not a very good DVD. It really deserves being restored. The American translation of the title is Night at the Crossroads, La Nuit du Carrefour, and it's made in 1932. It's a detective film or a policier based on a Georges Simenon novel, Inspector Maigret. And it is so wild and weird, I don't even know how to explain it to you, and I won't. But I think that it's a terrific, little-known movie.
Yeah.
I'm very curious now.
But 3 people voted for it, so it's not totally unknown.
Oh, yeah? Who were the other two?
Cristina Fernandez and Martial Pisani.
Don't know them.
Yeah. The next one on my list is My Buñuel. I went with The Exterminating Angel. I've seen the first Buñuel I saw was Los Olvidados at the cinema, and I was just blown away. I was like, I've got to find more of this. Since then, I've seen what's the film with Catherine Deneuve?
Belle de Jour.
Belle de Jour, yes.
Have you seen Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie?
Yes. Yeah, that one's amazing as well. That one easily could have gone on the list as well. I feel like I've seen a couple others.
Viridiana.
I haven't seen that one. But Exterminating Angel was the one to me that really just everything came together. And the thing that always strikes me about Buñuel is that I watch his film this one's from 1962. It feels like it's fresher than films that came out last week.
And it's funny. I mean, it's funny.
Yeah.
Or in a weird way. It's
funny. And it's basically about this group of people that come to a dinner party, and then it's time to go. And no one goes. And
he has so many dinner party jokes in his movie. My favorite joke in the Woody Allen movie Midnight in Paris.
Yes,
go ahead.
Yes. Well, Woody Buñuel is a character in this film, and Owen Wilson walks by him and says, I think it's a great idea for a movie if a bunch of people show up for dinner and then they can't leave. And Buñuel's like, why can't they leave? Which is the question that you're asking. It's never explained in the film.
Yeah, but that's the surrealist question.
Exactly.
That's the big joke.
But that's what's great about the movie, because people will be like, all right, it's time to go. And there was like, the door's right there. He's like, I know. I'm leaving. And they'll just stand there. And there's like police massing outside. Like, this could have easily turned into like a 50s B horror movie in a second, but it never does. It stays this really fascinating film, and like they're breaking into the walls to like break into the water pipes because they can't get to the kitchen. They can't leave this room for some reason. But I love watching that movie. I want to watch it again and again and again, and that's why it's on my list. And that is the last film that I added on this list that I felt like that one has to be on the list. That one has to be on the list. I have to have a Buñuel. Which Buñuel is going to be that one, because I think that one's the most interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I had to have a John Ford movie on my list, and I went with Grapes of Wrath.
Okay.
The reason why I went with that is because of basically the version we got to see here at the cinema, and it really opened my eyes to how great that movie is. And of course, it is obviously based on the book, and I think it is one of those movies. I mean, it's been obviously remade a couple of times throughout sort of Hollywood history, but I think the original 1940s version is the one that really cements sort of that ultimate dread about the family having to pack up and then just go. And just the acting in it is great. Obviously, the directing is solid. There's a reason for that. There's other good John Ford movies that I could have easily put on the list, but that one just recently, out of all the ones that I've seen, just really struck a chord in me. So it just was one of those that I thought this is almost a perfect movie for me. Just with I don't know. It's hard for me to explain it. It just it wasn't one that immediately came to me, but then I started thinking, okay, let's just start breaking this down with directors. Like, okay, I got that one. Okay, now there's John Ford.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
John Ford. Who am I? Which movie am I going to put? And if it wasn't honestly for the print that we saw, which was pristine,
it was perfect
here at the cinema. I don't know if it would have made the list.
Yeah.
But it was right place, right time for me to sort of keep it in my mind.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
This is where my Hitchcock got listed. I knew, people don't believe me when I say this, but I knew Vertigo was going to win. And I can go back and talk about why that is. 10 years ago, Vertigo was number 2. And so I said, I'm not going to vote for Vertigo. There are other Hitchcock movies I like as much. And so I voted for Rear Window.
Yeah.
I just think it's technically such a brilliant movie. And it's kind of the beginning of Hitchcock's preoccupation with movies about voyeurism and watching, and where the audience is implicated with all the stuff that's going on the screen. And I think it originates that. Was latently that was always there, but then it really becomes part of him. And so I voted for Rear Window.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. That was the other Hitchcock that I was thinking about. Basically, because of that reason, because the audience is really sort of like, there's a movie, we were talking about this actually before they were recording, Dial In for Murder. You just, you know what's going to happen. Like you, as the audience, already know how it's going to play out, and then it plays out in front of you. Whereas your Rear Window, you're kind of experiencing that with the character at the same time. And it's such a suspenseful movie. And it's almost like the Apollo 13 for me. Like, I know how it's going to end, but I'm still like, don't do it. And I do not blame you for adding that one to the list, because there's so many great Hitchcock movies.
And it could be described as a comedy, too.
It's true,
It's an amusing film.
Yeah.
That's the sort of last big Hitchcock that I haven't seen. I was missing a lot of Hitchcock over the last 2 or 3 years, and I've made it a point to like go back and pick up a lot of those, like Vertigo and other stuff like that. That's the one that is really sort of sticking in my craw that I need to go.
You've really got to see it.
I'll just interject here that I think it was either 4 or 5 Hitchcock films made it on the list, fairly high on the list, all American. And if you figure that Vertigo made number 1, plus he had 5 other movies in the list.
Yeah.
So anyway, the voting got split, away from one individual film, but he still came out on top.
Totally.
So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's some statistician out there doing like a poll of like, well, this director had this many films, but they were weighted this way, and so this is the best director. I'm sure that's being done somewhere. So the next one on my list is from 1933. It's the earliest one on my list, King Kong, the original King Kong. Again, another one that I think changed the way people thought about the way movies could be made, special effects wise, and as far as from what I've understood, this was one of the first like real film scores where it was like we wrote this music for this film specifically.
You may be right. I should know the answer to that, but I don't.
At least the special features on the DVD claim that. I don't know if it's absolutely true, but that was what a lot of the people were saying.
It's very early on, and usually it was before the time they had studio orchestras in all the studios. But
And we'll talk about this tomorrow night, actually. But I was watching the Casablanca special features, and they were talking about Max Steiner, who did the music for Casablanca. Yeah. He also did the music for King Kong. He also did the music for Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind, yeah.
It's like you do the music for King Kong, and people are like, all right, that's pretty good. You do the music for Gone with the Wind as well. People are like, wow, all right.
Right.
Then you also do Casablanca. Now you're just showing off.
Right.
I mean,
Steiner was legendary in Hollywood for doing what they call Mickey Mousing.
Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's like the character's going upstairs and he goes, duh, 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 and it's coming in.
There's a lot of that in Gone with the Wind, for sure.
Yeah. And actors hated him because they felt like he was getting in the way of their performance. He was intruding too much on them. But it was wall-to-wall with him.
But if you don't have it, if you sort of think King Kong's like an okay movie, not a great movie, or just worth checking out, get the DVD or Blu-ray that's been out recently. The special features on that are just stunning. One of the best packages of Blu-ray that
and the movie's
is out
been
there.
Remade several times and nowhere near as good as that original. And there's something about that Willis O'Brien's special effects that I find infinitely charming. And the surrealists love that movie. I mean, it's just a dream movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got another movie that I actually saw at the cinema, and I asked you that question, Andy. I said, how many movies were movies that you either saw for the first time or you saw specifically at the cinema for a reason? I can
actually tell you which ones here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that I have seen at the cinema, and 2 others that I will see at the cinema this semester.
This was my next one, Great Expectations from 1946, the David Lean version. Just blew me away. I think I'd seen them all in reverse. Like I saw like the Gwyneth Paltrow version or whatever. Ethan Hawke, I think, was also in it. Then there was like a awkward like 70s or 60s version that just was awful.
Yeah.
And then I saw maybe one before that, and then this one. And I thought, maybe that's why it was so satisfying, because it's just so well made.
If I had put a Lean on my list, I did not put a Lean on my list, it probably would have been that one, because I agree. I've seen that movie on DVD only. I missed the one at the cinema. But that is one of my favorite movies. It's just, and that's it. It's another one of those movies that is essentially perfect.
Yeah.
It just works all the way through. There's never a moment in that movie where you're sitting there thinking, well, maybe it'll end soon. Yeah,
and it jumps around in time too. That's the other thing too. It's again another one of those movies where it just Goes from the kids, the youth, sort of to middle, not too much in the middle, and then the adult version of that character. And there's a string all the way through it. Just every scene is there for a reason. I think out of most of the Dickens adaptations, it's the one that is just the finest tuned of anything that I've seen, come out of any director. It's such a well-made, pardon the pun, lean movie.
Yeah. Well, Lean was, I feel like Lean was sort of known for doing adaptations. That was one of the things, because he also did the Oliver Twist.
Yep.
He did all those Noel Coward films,
But this one is just, he just nails the styling, the scenery, just everything about that time period is just impeccable in this version. And that's what I just have great respect for what he did with this movie. So that's why it's on my list.
Yeah.
Oh, mine. This is another one that made the top 10. Sunrise, the F.W. Murnau movie, 1927, silent movie. Murnau is again a director who I think is just so great. You almost need to have him on a list. He was a German who came to the U.S. and made 2 films here. This was one of the ones he made in Hollywood. It's probably the most German movie ever made in Hollywood, and he died in an accident not too long after that. Sunrise is, if I told you the story, it would sound very hokey. It's about a husband and wife who are farmers and very simple people, and a city woman comes out to the country on vacation and seduces the husband, and he decides he wants to murder his wife, and so anyway, he tries to do that. It doesn't. Anyway, I don't want to give you too much, but they wind up in the city at the end, and I just find it an overwhelming movie.
Yeah.
It's it's a very, very nice movie. It was at the cinema with piano accompaniment last spring, maybe.
Spring, I think.
But yeah, I agree. It is a film that it's like it jumps around, and you're never quite sure where it. But then it gets into, once they get into the city, though, I feel like it's a very straight.
The tone changes a little bit. Yeah. It's very expressionist, stylized. Everything is on a set, and incredibly long tracking shots, which was one of for that time, which was one of Murnau's signatures.
Oh, it's me now. It's time for my Ford film.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a huge John Ford fan. John did the Ford series, first thing right up front at the cinema, and I'd say there's only about 3 or 4 John Ford movies that I think are like really excellent movies, and this is my favorite John Ford film, and I definitely like in my top 10 of all time, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Yeah. This film is just perfect. Everything about it just works. It's got the best title of any film of all time, I think. It's also got one of the best reveals in the entirety of cinema. There's this scene where, somebody goes into their office and is like looking around, and then they turn on a lamp, and then as the lights come up, you realize the room has been filled with the bad guys the whole time that he's been walking around, and you just know something awful is about to happen. John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart are in this movie. I think it was the first time they'd ever done a film together. It's one of John Ford's last films. Lee Marvin is in this as the villain, and I don't know if there's ever been a better villain in a film. Like, this guy is so menacing and so hateful, and it's the twist at the end. Maybe you saw it coming, Jason. I never saw it coming. Like, I never assumed that was what would actually happen at the end of the film. And the film just has this great overarching theme, this narrative of, maybe the story works better than the truth. Like, maybe it's okay that it's, and you never really know if John Ford is sort of saying like, if he agrees with that, or if he's just saying,
it's a famous line.
Yeah.
What is it?
When the truth becomes better,
what is
something
it?
About print the
legend.
legend.
It's a newspaper guy talking or something. Anyway,
when the legend becomes better than the truth, print the legend, or something like that.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, but you don't. That's an interesting question. I've always felt I'm not sure what I think about that.
Yeah,
and I don't know what the film thinks about it either.
Yeah. But anyways, Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
My favorite Ford films are The Quiet Man and My Darling Clementine.
Yeah.
Yeah, some good ones. My sixth one on the list is Man with a Golden Arm. We've talked about it before. I actually think we've spoken about it on the podcast
Otto
previously.
Preminger.
Yep.
Yep.
It's also based on some previous material, short story, I think.
It's a novel by Nelson Algren.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. I think it is just sort of in terms of, I think it made my list more so because of the fact that it's a heroin movie in Hollywood in the 50s. I think is pretty interesting. Also,
Preminger
Sinatra
was big about trying to challenge the censorship code.
right?
Of that period.
And Sinatra, who obviously is Sinatra at the time, doing a movie about a heroin addict,
Yeah.
and he is the heroin addict. That's all I'm going to say. Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing to me. That's a
Yeah.
pretty bold move for someone in his sort of seat. It's there have been actors sort of recently that try to do things like that. I just don't think that it's as shocking as an iconic character like Frank Sinatra sitting down. And the movie's great. The movie's just vastly entertaining and just solid.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think about the other Preminger film from around that time, which is Anatomy of a Murder,
Right.
with another big-name actor doing a character very different from what he's known for, and almost poking fun at the character that he's been known for playing,
Right.
and also sort of, needling at the censorship of the time as well.
Sinatra, though, had won the Academy Award for From Here
Right.
to Return, and he was trying to establish himself as an actor.
Yeah, like a serious actor.
So he was. Yeah.
I just thought
he wanted the role on the waterfront.
Right.
And anyway. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think, like you said, sort of code and Sinatra and Sinatra breaking code almost. It's just it really does it for me. So, and I've mentioned that one. That's in like my top 5 sometimes.
Yeah.
Ask me on one day, and it may be at least in my top 10.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So
Yeah.
my next one was a Charles Burnett film, To Sleep with Anger. I am kind of interested in trying to write something about Burnett, and I think he's an extraordinary figure who. This was his one chance to cross over maybe and really be a Hollywood director, but the movie just bombed.
Yeah.
It's about a black family in Watts in Los Angeles, and it's based kind of on Burnett's own experience. That population in Los Angeles had moved there from the South, and some of them want to cover up and conceal their Southern roots. They think it's sort of countrified,
Right.
and yet some of those things still survive, and it's about that complicated family film. I won't go into it much further.
Yeah, I saw it at this is the one with Danny Glover.
Right.
Yeah, I saw this at the cinema. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.